Hey there, I'm Lance and I'm a gamer.
And I'm Sam and I'm a non-gamer.
And we are Love to Hate, where we help gamers find great games to play with non-gamers.
And today we're taking a look at Savernake Forest by Devir.
Savernake Forest is a card drafting game in which you will use those cards to build a grid of paths for your animals to go through the forest. In this game, you will be drafting cards, and each card that you take will provide you something. Maybe you get to go first the next round. Maybe you get another animal for your forest. And with those animals, you are trying to build pathways that they are going to come in contact with their favorite foods. Because ultimately, that's what gives you the most points in this game. Let me show you how it works down below, and then we'll come back and share our thoughts on it as a gamer and non-gamer. Alright, I have Savernake Forest on the table. Let me show you guys how this tile laying game, this path building game is going to work. Now with this game, you are going to have lots of cards. You're going to have a main board. You are going to have some wooden components such as a first player marker, some water droplets, some layer tokens or meeples. Again, these are wooden, they are painted, and then you will have your player pieces up here at the top. These really only come into part of the game at the end when you are doing the final scoring, as these will be your score trackers, as the backside of this board doubles as a score tracker once the game is complete. And you do have a nice cloth bag here that you can put all the wooden components into. Now, with this game, it's very simple. What you are going to do when it is your turn, starting with the first player, you will draft one of the four options that you see out here. Now, whatever you draft, you end up getting something with that. So if you draft this first card, which these first three cards are always going to come out of the path deck of cards over here. And so as you can see, they are going to have paths on them. Sometimes they'll have multiple paths that curve. And on those paths, there are going to be a number of food items which you'll want to pay attention to, as that's going to correspond to the different critters that you are able to get into your forest. So if I take this first card right here, I would take it and I would place it somewhere in my 4x4 grid that I am building in front of myself. Now, if you are playing a two-player game, you are going to do a 4x8 grid or an 8x4 grid. You get to decide how you want to build that as you play your cards into your playing area. But if you're playing more than two players, you will be doing a 4x4 grid, and wherever I place this does not necessarily mean that that's where it's at. So for instance, if I'm just placing it in the center of my playing area, does not necessarily mean that that is the center of my 4x4 grid. It could be that this is the furthest left spot as I start to build out forward from it. Now, if I take from the first spot, I get the first player marker, and I will get to be the first player in the first round, or in the next round. If I take from this one, I will get one of these water droplets, which we'll come back to what those are good for in a second. If I take from the third slot, I'll get a layer, which we'll come back to here in just a second. And if I take from the last spot, as you can see, there's a rabbit here, and that's to remind you that every card in the last spot is going to be a critter, as it will come from this critter deck over here. Now, these are very important cards because this is where you're going to be getting all of your points. You want to try to get critters into your forest. They'll come with a number of victory points already printed on them. So this owl here gives me 1 victory point. The layer icon here and the number below it tells me how many food items this critter will eat on the path that I make for it. So as you can see, there is an open path here going to the north on this tile. And so when I place it into my grid, I will want to connect path cards that build upon that path with food items that this owl will eventually eat as it crosses down this path. Now, I want to pay attention to these stats here that are in the corners, because as I can see here, this worm gives me 1 point when the owl eats the worm, as well as the eggs, but the acorns and the berries are not going to give me any points. So I would not probably want this one. Well, the eggs would give me 1 point, but the acorn would give me nothing. And then likewise, this card right here, the berries aren't going to give me anything, and the worm would give me 1. Now, the owl eats the first 4 things it comes in contact with, regardless of whether it gives me points or not. So I do want to be careful about whatever I slot in front of this owl. I definitely would not want to slot this card because those berries are not going to give me anything, as we already stated. Now, going back to the water droplets and the layers, and again, you get those whenever you select one of these 2 cards in the middle. If I take from the second slot, I will get a water droplet, and when I have a water droplet, I can place it on one of the stats of the critters in my forest. And what I'm doing there is I'm increasing the value for that type of food by 1 because I'm placing a water droplet on it. So if I placed it right here in the top right, the worms would not give me 1 point, they would give me 2 points. So I'd really want to hammer in on getting worms here for my owl. Whereas if I put it on the berries, then I could increase that 0 to a 1. Now you can only ever have 1 water droplet in each corner of the card for a maximum of 4 water droplets on a total card. Now the layers are going to work on increasing the number of food that that particular critter can eat. So I can place this layer here on the owl, and that would increase the 4 to a 5, and it's going to eat the first 5 things that it comes in contact with. And that's the gist. All players are going to draft 1 card from the market. You will then replace empty spots from their corresponding decks. Again, the first 3 cards are going to come from the path deck. The last spot will come from the critter deck. And you will repeat the round, starting with whoever has the rooster here, going in clockwise order from that point forward. And you'll repeat until you fill up your 4x4 grid, or again, if you're playing a 2-player game, then your 4x8 grid or 8x4 grid. And then once you've done that, you will flip this board over, and you will show that it is a score tracker, and you will keep track of your points with your markers going down this snake path here. And again, you're getting points for the points that are on your critters and the food that they eat and the value that those food give to you. Whoever has the most points is going to be the winner, and that is how you play Savernake Forest. Let's go back up top and share our thoughts on this one. And we're back, and now we're going to share our thoughts on Savernake Forest from a gamer and non-gamer's perspective. But first, before we do that, I just want to let you guys at home know that I got this copy at Gen Con because I answered a trivia question correctly. And so I won this copy. I just want everybody to know that I won this copy. So I had to answer how many different languages does Devir make their games in. And what are those languages? And it's 5. I won't get into the weeds as to what those languages are. No, I know that. I know that because I've opened a lot of their games before. But anyway, so Sam, this is one of those kind of tile laying, card laying type games.
Our channel's just going to be turned into tile lay.
Love to tile lay.
They're going to think we're a home improvement channel.
But this is a little bit of a different kind of one. You do have a central market that you're drafting from, but what you draft determines what you get to do with those sorts of things. And it's just a little bit of a different type of tile laying, card laying type game. What did you think about this one?
Tile laying in a certain grid, and I felt good about it.
Yeah.
I think I like these games because I am able to see, I think, a little bit further than you are. And so I feel like when we play these games, his gamer perspective and my, I don't know, anxiety, organization skills kind of balance each other out to where they're typically closer games.
We're on a level playing
field. So it's not like he's I think we go back and forth between winning these types of games.
And I think a lot of gamers, and I don't want to speak for all gamers, but I think there's probably a good tangent of gamers that would say when you're drafting things and you're building it into like this grid, which you don't have a confined grid in this game, but when you're building and you're using what you draft to build with, and you don't know what's going to be available to you, that there's a luck factor. You're at the mercy of whatever comes out in that market. And if you're not the first one to pick every time, then you may not get what you need. And there's just too much luck involved with that. And I think, I don't know, I accept that with these kind of games. It's not something that wrecks it for me.
Your skill is being able to work with what you're given.
Yeah.
And not really thinking of it's luck, but how good are you at being able to use whatever you have.
Adapt and find alternative ways to use it. Yeah.
And I absolutely love that. I like how my brain works when I'm doing these types of games.
And you do have to do that quite a bit in this game because it is only 4 options every time. And I mean, when it's your turn, you're not necessarily going to have 4 options. You only have 4 options if you're the first player.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you got to take with what you've got here, and you've got to find ways to make that work. Maybe that's taking on an extra animal that you didn't necessarily want, but maybe you find out that there's better cards for that animal to work in your forest, even though you weren't planning on taking that animal. So this is a game that it feels like there's a lot of twists and turns that happen that you weren't necessarily planning for and making a part of to be your strategy, but you find that you have to. You find you have to adapt a lot in this game, and I like that.
Yeah,
I like that quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, and two, I like, well, we'll get into pros and cons.
Well, no, we're talking about the things that really stood out to us with this game.
I like how you could change by adding the water or adding, you could... You explain what I'm saying.
Basically, so the way the game works, the mechanics of this game are that you can change the base factor of the way the game is designed, if that makes sense. So like this animal, I didn't really want this animal because it doesn't score very well for anything, or maybe it only scores in the things that I don't have available to give to it. I don't have the cards lined up to give it the nuts that it wants or whatever. But there are mechanics built into the game where I can then make that squirrel or fox or whatever really desires those foods that are lined up right there in front of it. So even though there are some disadvantages with what I'm stuck with having to draft, I have other ways to make those disadvantages become advantages. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And I really liked how you had to think through where your path was going to go, and you're working with was it 4x10?
Gosh.
I know it was. I'm pretty sure it was 4.
Yeah, something like that.
4x10, 4x8, something like that. Mine ended up being a longer path. And how you would make your roads, your paths. You can't have them running into each other. So some are really, really short. But I like that because you kind of have, okay, this card's not going to get me anything. It's not. I'm just going to place it here, and I'm going to really focus more on this path and this path. And changing that base factor so it's multiplying by more. And I liked that.
And another thing I'll throw out there too with it is that this is a game where it's not going to let you just continually go with the one thing that you found to work, because you can only go so far with it. That animal can only take so many food before it just can't take anymore. And you got to go on to something different. And I like that because so many times there are games out there, especially tile laying games, where it feels like you can find the one thing that just works, and you can just keep hammering away at that one thing over and over and over again until finally somebody takes it away from you.
Yeah.
But the game itself doesn't ever keep you from doing it. This game does. It won't let you just keep going on that one little path with your fox or your squirrel or whatever, and you just keep going forever and ever. You can't do that.
It really keeps the game going.
Yes. Yeah. All right, so I feel like we've raved quite a bit about this game, but let's get to those bullet point pros and cons, the things that really stood out. So, Sam, what made this game different and stood out to you in a good way? I thought
the artwork was really nice.
Yes.
Just the fall look, the fall theme.
Yep.
Just the concept of... Just the whole concept of the game I just thought was really unique. Like Lance had said earlier, how you are limited by how far that animal can go, how many foods they can eat before you really need to move on and think about something else instead of just continuing, make the longest path. And that's not the game at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I really liked that. So you are having to kind of rethink your plan every probably couple of turns, figuring out what's going to work, how's this going to work.
Or you got to have like 3 or 4 different things
Yes.
going at the same time.
Yeah, so I just think it's just the playability, and also just visually, it was easy to play because it's very clear what you're supposed to do, what's going on. The cards are clear, what they're supposed to do. So I think that's really great for a non-gamer.
Yeah. The graphic design, the way the game looks is it's fantastic. The production is really good with this game too. Those components are really nice. I mean, seeing this out on the table and it being a small box, you would think, okay, there can't be that much game to it because it's a small box. It's a cards.
Yeah, and actually, I don't think I ever realized how small the box was because usually Lance just has it set up for me. But yeah, it's actually very surprising that game fit all in there.
Yeah. Surprising was the biggest emotion that I had playing this game because I was not thinking of it being such a big box experience. And I'm not going to sit here and say, well, this is like playing, a really heavy game. This is like playing Root. It kind of has a similar look to it, I think. But it does have a bigger feel to it than what it is because you get a really crunchy experience of continually having to change your strategy, or now I drafted this and I wasn't planning on it, so what do I do with it?
Yeah.
And so you're having to do a lot of thinking in this game, and I was really surprised by that because it just doesn't look like it would be that with this small box and this cute little foresty look to it. But no, the production is really good on it. Anything that doesn't stand out in a good way?
I mean, I honestly can't think of anything that's just blatantly negative about the game. I think the grid is a little bit limiting for good reason, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I know that one of the numbers was maybe 4 or 5. It just seemed very... Are you going to look at it?
I'm going to look it up because we need to let you guys know what it is. But keep going. But
it just seemed very... thin, I guess. But I guess, I mean, it is a trail.
It's 4x4.
It's not 4x4.
Yeah, it's 4x4.
No, you went much higher up than that.
So we're thinking of a 2-player game. Because in the 2-player game, you can do that. What is it? It is a 8x4.
Yeah.
8x4. Okay.
I was like, there's no way it was 4x4.
Yeah.
We went long. And so it is limiting. Gosh, I can't imagine a 4x4.
Well, so that's in when you're playing more than 2 players. So but in a 2-player game, you're doing 8x4. So it is bigger.
Yeah. But I enjoyed the game so much. It would be nice to have more space to play it. But that's how the game plays.
Going back to that surprising factor, that also kind of, I wouldn't say this is a huge con. It is a bigger game. I wouldn't say it's a table hog, but it's one of those sprawling games because you are playing cards and your area gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and you might find that I'm having to push some things out of the way to kind of make room for what I'm having here. And so if you've got a confined space and you're having to push your neighbor's cards because yours is starting to go that way, that could get slightly annoying.
I was very I had 4 and I just went straight up. You kind of...
I was kind of going more wide.
Yeah, but then I think you kind of ran out of...
I did.
Yours wasn't a perfect rectangle like mine was.
Yeah. I had some cards that I ended up wasting because I just didn't create my paths smartly. Yeah. And ended up not being as efficient as I should have been to do well in this game.
I think I could be a city planner.
You probably should be. Yeah, for real.
Just the whole... That's to be nice and perfect.
Okay, so let's get to our scores for this particular one. So, Sam, where does Savernake Forest come in at for you?
I really enjoyed this game, and I think it's small enough to be one of our travel games. I would love to play it again. I'd give it an 8.2.
Okay. I thought this one was going to be pretty high for you.
My entire top 10 list is going to be
tiling.
Entire thing.
Well, guess what? I think I'm higher than you are on this one because this is a game that's not going to be leaving my collection, and that is not... Oh, Devir gave me this game, and you can't trust what I'm saying because I've already told you I won this game, and I didn't even have to do a video on this one. I really, really like this game. I feel like it adds something different than your run-of-the-mill tile-laying, drafting-type games where you're building something in front of you. As we've already said, this provides ample opportunities to have to change what you're doing, to rethink what you've been doing, and have to adapt to what is available to you. Now, like all those other games, luck is going to be a factor, and some people are just going to have luckier draws for what's available to them, and the very thing that they needed is right there available to them. That's going to happen, but get over that aspect, because that's 90% of games. I think this one really adds something unique and different to this genre of game. I'm going to give it an 8.5. I really, really like this one. It's not going to leave my collection. This one is going to be one that
Might be in your top 10.
I will tell you this much. It probably will be on my top 10 for casual gamers. I do think, gamers are going to have a really good time with this one as well.
Yeah.
I think it's a great game to be playing with casual and casual and non-gamers. Gamers and casual / non-gamers. So really like this one. 8.5 for me. So the game is Savernake Forest. It is from Devir. Leave us some comments down below. Let us know what you think about this one.
Make sure to like and subscribe and push that bell button so you get notifications of all our new content.
I'm Lance.
I'm Sam.
And we are Love to Hate, where we try to help gamers find great games to play with non-gamers. We'll catch you next time.